A nigga just get confused. A nigga just get confused. A nigga just get confused. A nigga just get. A nigga just get. A nigga just get. A nigga just get confused.
Journey with me into the mind of a maniac, doomed to be a killer since I came out the nutsack. I'm in a murderous mind state with a heart full of terror. I see the devil in the mirror. Buck, lights out. Cause when I grab my sword, niggas get hauled out. Barrel 1, set your motherfucking flesh. Barrel 2, set your fucking heart at your chest. You see
what's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the Mack Lessons Radio Show. I'm your host, Mr. Tariq Nasheed. Glad to have everybody tuning into the show. Broadcasting live from Los Angeles, California. Today's show is brought to you by MackLessons.com. That's where you can get all your Macking needs, and UnitedPlayersOfAmerica.com. That's where you can chop up game with other players such as yourself. Now, I have a pay-per-view special that's coming up next week, June 26th. That's next Thursday. Because I haven't done a pay-per-view special in a while, but I'm going to have one next week. And the name of it is going to be called Bullshistory. A lot of people like the show I did last week about the message to black men, and that show is going to be an extension of that show. And it's going to be an extension of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to get into some real deep stuff today. But the name of the show is called Bullshistory, stuff that you should have learned in school and stuff that a lot of my young people who listen to the show, stuff that you should be learning in school and in general. And the reason why I'm doing this special is because I've been having friendly debates with some Eurocentric scholars and some white supremacists. And we've been having friendly debates. And I say friendly because it's not a name-calling thing. We've been going back and forth about the contributions of Europeans and the contributions of Africans throughout history. And I want to share some of the debate on that show with you guys. It's very good shit and a lot of stuff that black folks and people of color and even white folks need to know. We're going to uncover a lot of shit and stop the bullshistory and talk about real shit that has gone on in history up until today. So that's going to be a very deep show. I'm going to recommend a lot of books on that show. It's a real deep show. So you guys have to order that. Go to MackLessons.com and pre-order that show now. The 1 hour pay-per-view special, Bullshistory. Now, in today's show, I'm going to endorse a book that I've been reading. And this is my first time doing a whole show dedicated to a particular book that's not my book. I feel that this book is that important. And I get on that in a second. But right now, I want to talk about some things that's going on in the nigga news. A lot of folks are talking about the 50 Cent Young Buck beef. For those who don't know, the rapper 50 Cent threw Young Buck out of the group G Unit. And there have been a lot of subliminal jabs going back and forth. And recently, Young Buck was at a concert. It was on the internet. And he was saying, fuck G-Unit this, fuck G-Unit that. And 50 Cent decided to play and post up an internet phone call that they had, on the internet rather. Posted up a phone call he had with Young Buck. And Young Buck was displaying some bitch-assness on the phone. Young Buck was actually crying on the phone. And a lot of people are mad at 50 Cent for playing or for posting up that phone call or even taping the phone call. But the thing is, 50 Cent knew that Young Buck was the kind of nigga that would be a turncoat. He knew that Young Buck would eventually try to say some slick and greasy shit. So he had some ammunition in his back pocket. And he utilized that ammunition. And a lot of folks don't understand how chess players do it. That's a chess move when you think 3 steps ahead of a nigga. And I'm going to play some of the Young Buck phone call, and it's a real bad look for Young Buck. And this kills me. A lot of niggas be on that hardcore gangster shit, and then behind closed doors, the bitch assness comes out. Now here's some of that phone call. Hold on.
That I'm in for the taxes from last year, and then this year's about to roll around. They're trying to owe you no shows, no other that. Man, I'm confused a little bit. And at the end of the day, it's like I'm handling it wrong. I done got out of line a little bit with you. So I swear to God, I have.
Yeah, you're gonna be alright. You hear me?
I'm wrong.
This is 50.com.
That nigga just get confused.
I know. Don't worry about it. You gotta be able to stay closer to me, Buck, so you don't fuck up. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I just gotta get. I'm good. I just got confused a little bit.
That's enough. That's enough,
Well,
man. I can't take it. That's a bad look. That's a bad look for Buck, man. I don't know how this dude is going to bounce back from that, man. Shit. I listening to that, I don't want to buy this nigga's record, man. Yeah, your favorite rapper displayed that kind of bitch assness. This nigga's crying on the phone to another nigga. Damn. That's not a good look, man. Y'all niggas be doing all that hard gangster shit and you on the phone crying to another nigga. It ain't never that serious, homie. It ain't never that serious, man. But hey, man, all my blessings to Young Buck. I hope he gets it together. But that's a very bad look. But I digress. Also, another thing I want to talk about this so-called semi-beef with Ice-T and Soulja Boy. Ice-T made some comments recently that Soulja Boy has fucked up hip-hop and Soulja Boy is garbage and he can eat a dick and Hurricane Chris. And a lot of people agree with that. Now, the tactics of it was kind of untactical to say it the way he said it, but, you know, that's OG gangster shit. You say what the fuck is on your mind. And Soulja Boy responded with, you know, some little corny-ass disses. I'll play a little clip of that as well.
Where I'm coming from. Nigga, I wasn't born rich, nigga. I wasn't born in no big-ass house like this. Nigga, y'all work to get it. I'm 17 years old, dog. Nigga, I worked hard for this shit. You feel me? Even if it was all this got me out for one song, nigga, you should be congratulating. You should be congratulating. Real talk. You should be telling me, congratulations, young brother. Get your money.
He's talking to Ice-T.
That's what you should be saying instead of eat a dick. Eat a dick, nigga. To me, be the same. It's niggas, man. You know how many niggas in the hood right now? This wishing they was in my position. That wishing they was in your position. Nigga that wish they had some money. Wish they had a song. Wish they had a hit. Wish they had anything. Nigga, it's niggas that can't get a job. And you up here talking about, Soulja Boy, I know you young enough to be my son, but eat a dick. What kind of shit is that? I know you young enough to be my son, but eat a dick. Nigga, that's some bullshit, dog. That's some bullshit. I work hard. I work hard to get her, dog. I work real hard. I promise.
Okay, that's enough. That's enough of that. That's enough of that. And he went on, was making some little disses like, I see old as fucking. Let me put some music on. Now, I can understand where Soulja Boy is coming from. He's, you know, he wants to defend himself. You know, Ice-T made some comments, and, you know, he's a young dude. He wants to defend himself. And Ice-T did get a little gangster on him. And I understand where both of them are coming from. I'm playing the devil's advocate. I understand where Ice-T is coming from because Ice-T, and I'm talking to Soulja Boy, let him know that I'm saying, and this is constructive, I'm not shitting on him, and I've talked about Soulja Boy before, like the Soulja Boy Crank That song. It was a cool little song. It was a novelty song. The kids liked it. I liked the song. But some of the other songs that you came out with, Soulja Boy, was some bullshit. That Y'all Trick Y'all, that was some bullshit, homie. I mean, let's just keep it 100. It's not a diss, man. That was a real bullshit-ass song. It's like you didn't even try. You just threw some shit together. You just took the money and ran. So a lot of niggas who have been in the game, like Ice, they take offense to that because you have to understand that Ice and people in that generation, like Ice, Cube, NWA, Luther Campbell, Public Enemy. These dudes, man, damn near went to jail for hip-hop, man. I mean, these dudes were about to get fed charges, indicted on them. I mean, they were facing some serious shit. They had congressional hearings about Ice-T's lyrics and NWA and all this shit, man. So these guys really fought Congress to give you the right to say what you're saying on records now. For a lot of these younger cats, man, these guys fought for that. They put their livelihood on the line, literally, for you guys to spit game on records. And for you to get that opportunity to spit on records to put some bullshit like yah, trick, yah, that's kind of offensive. A lot of niggas be like, damn, man, I almost went to jail for this shit. So I can see why niggas would get offended because of that. Niggas who have been in the game for a while and put in some real work and some real sacrifices. So I want y'all to look at it from that perspective. That makes sense, guys? All right, good. Now let me get back to spitting me some game here. But that little thing between Ice-T and Soulja Boy, it's a generational thing. Again, we just want the rap game to step up. And congratulations to Lil Wayne, by the way. He sold 1 million copies, man, which hasn't been done in years. Somebody sell 1 million copies in such a short time in hip-hop. So congratulations to Lil Wayne. Now anyway, on today's show, I want to talk about this book that I have received recently. This is a book that is very important. I recommend that all of my listeners go out and get this book, especially my people of color, black people, even white people. This book talks about something that I touched on the last show. On the last show, I was talking about why whites are in a certain position financially and why blacks are in a certain position financially as far as housing and living in the suburbs and living in the ghettos and living in the inner cities. And on last week's show, I really touched the tip of the iceberg. After getting this book, I was literally blown away. There was a lot of stuff that I didn't know about the game as far as race relations in the country. It was deeper than I thought. There's this book called Sundown Towns. It's a book by a man named James Loewen. He's a professor at the University of Vermont, and he lives in Washington, D.C. And he has another book that I read before that I've had for a few years. It's called Lies My Teacher Told Me, which was a great book. And James Loewen, in his book Sundown Towns, he talks about thousands and thousands of towns and cities in America that specifically kept black people out from about 1890 to 1968. And actually some of the towns still keep black people out in subtle ways. But this book breaks the shit down so deep, and it exposes things that a lot of people simply didn't know. Now, a lot of older white folks know about this. A lot of younger whites don't know about it, but a lot of older white people know about it, and the author of the book is a white guy. A lot of times when a black man comes out with a book like this, he's labeled as Afrocentric, and a lot of Afrocentric, quote-unquote, books don't get major publishing like they should. So it's kind of a gift and a curse. See, a lot of times we don't validate information until it comes from a white guy. But on the same side of the coin, on the other side of the coin, a lot of white guys, their books are easily, they can get their books published faster. And this is one of the few white men who really tells the truth about race relations. One of the few in history who talks about history that I really respect their opinion. This dude is the truth with it. He breaks it down, and he's white, so y'all who need validation from white folks, you have it from him, and he's breaking it down. When white folks are telling you what the deal is as far as race relations and how fucked up white society has been, it's some real shit. People always talk about the American dream. What is the American dream? The American dream, they say, is liberty, justice for all that bullshit. The real American dream is owning a home and achieving a certain level of wealth. The real American dream is real estate. People always tell you, you get money this, you get money that way, invest in stocks, invest in this. The biggest investment, the most important investment anybody can make, and I'm talking to my people of color here, is real estate. Because real estate, the property value usually always goes up. You always gain some type of equity. So you really, really, really need to get real estate. Real estate is very, very, very important. And this is the underlying foundation of why I'm talking about this book. The reason why a lot of whites are in a certain position they're in today, and a lot of blacks are in a certain position they are in today, is because one group had access to real estate and the other group did not. A lot of whites always sit back and look at blacks and say, well, damn, how come you guys haven't made any progress? Slavery is over. Slavery's been over for 140 years. You have civil rights. So the general consensus is black people are in a position they're in now. A lot of black people are living in ghettos and inner cities, and white people are living in the suburbs because white people must be smarter. Or black people just must not be mentally superior as they should be. Or black people are mentally inferior. That's the general consensus that people try to relay. And on the last show I did, I talked about that and I debunked some of that. And this book, Sundown Town, it goes deeper. This book talks about cities in America, thousands of cities, that had a unwritten rule. Some rules were written, but basically it was a general understanding that black people had to be out of these towns by sundown. This is some deep shit. And I knew about a few cities. I knew about 10, 15 cities that had race riots and kind of ran black people out. And I've talked about it on this show many times. I've talked about Tulsa, Oklahoma, Rosewood, a couple of places in Illinois. But again, that was just the tip of the iceberg. According to this book, there were thousands and thousands of cities all around America that ran niggas the fuck out. Thousands of them. And this book lists a lot of them. And it has newspaper clippings. It has flyers from back in those times. A lot of information that a lot of people tried to keep buried and hidden. This guy has yanked the covers off that shit. You have to get that book. But like I was saying, man, real estate is very important, and a lot of black people were denied access to certain real estate. That's why white people are in a position they're in now. See, the thing is, after slavery, directly after slavery, during the Reconstruction times, from like 1865 till around 1890, black people were actually doing all right. Because after the Civil War, everybody was kind of patriotic. And a lot of black people moved up north, and white people kind of welcomed them in the communities. Then at around 1890 and around the turn of the century, around the 1900s, things started changing. Things went dramatically wrong. All of a sudden, A lot of black people were doing well. They were doing a little bit too well. And that started fucking with a lot of white folks. Because, like I said before, a lot of the people in America, the white folks were either rich or they were working class poor. There was really no in between. And the rich white folks, they didn't give a damn who worked for them. Long as you made money, long as you produced. And blacks were used to working for free. So any kind of wage would be cool for them. They're like, cool, you're going to pay me for doing what I did for free for the last 300 years? Sure. As a matter of fact, I work for less than this white guy. That's where the problem came in. That's where the problem came in. The white people of that time, they said that there was a Negro problem. The Negro problem was black people were taking jobs from working class whites. And a lot of times, again, they were doing better. And the black people who were doing better, they were the main targets. White people would literally burn their homes down out of hate, out of jealousy. I've talked about the Tulsa, Oklahoma race riot, where there were many prosperous black people who were run out of Tulsa and their community was bombed, literally bombed. It's the first time in American history where civilians were bombed. But that was the Negro problem back then, that niggas was taking jobs from white folks. So that's when the racial segregation really, really kicked in. That's when racism really kicked in. That's when they started having minstrel shows, and surprisingly, a lot of the racial segregation in a lot of these sundown towns were not in the South. See, that's the misconception. A lot of northern white people, and even today, they like to make it seem like the South was dangerous and southern whites were real fucked up towards blacks. Southern whites had lived around blacks for years. So they were kind of used to the black presence. They were used to the presence of black folks, so it wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, there were lynchings and there was white folks running niggas out of town, but it wasn't as severe as it was in the North. In the North, they were going crazy. Most of these sundown towns, these places where they ran niggas out and black folks couldn't be in there after 6 o'clock, this was in Illinois, Wisconsin, Detroit, New York, all over, even in the West Coast. Even in western states, rather. And again, the reason for this is because the propaganda about black people start kicking in too. A lot of people start talking about eugenics and black people being inferior. And again, there was a movie called The Birth of the Nation that came out around 1915. That was another propaganda film that made whites lash out against blacks. You feel where I'm going? So a lot of black folks moved to northern cities, but it wasn't the inner city. Like, the major cities were full of white folks. So black people lived in the outskirts of the city. Black people were living in very rural parts of the North. And white people ran them out towards the inner cities. In this book, Sundown Towns, they have newspaper clippings from newspapers all around the country. And I'm going to read one. This is how open they were with their shit. They just openly said what they felt. It was a newspaper clipping for a place called Mena, Arkansas. And it was an advertisement to get people to move into this place. And they said, come down to Mena. Ever heard of Mena? Come live with us. We have cool summers, mild winters, soft water, no mosquitoes, and no niggas. They would put this shit in newspapers, y'all. They would put this on flyers and pass them out all around the cities. It's some deep shit, man. You guys have to read this book. And people always talk about the lynchings back then. There were a lot of lynchings back then. But people never really talk about why. They give the false consensus that the people were accused of committing a crime. That's not true. Most of the people that were lynched were not accused of committing a crime. That's what a lot of historians say now. That's not the real reason, because niggas knew better than to commit a crime against white folks. They knew what the consequences were. These people would get lynched for being in these sundown towns after dark. That's why they got lynched, for the most part, just for being in a certain place. This book even talks about how some cities put sirens on water towers, and the sirens would ring at 6 p.m. every night, alerting any black person in the vicinity to leave. Some of these cities kept their sirens up to 1998. This book talks about this. Black folks, y'all got to get up on this. Black folks had to come out with a book back in the day. It was called the Negro Motorist Green Book, and this book circulated around the black community, and it had a list of different hotels, restaurants, auto shops that black people can go to be safe. It's called the Negro Motorist Green Book, and they have a picture of that in this book as well. It was some real deep shit that you guys need to know about. I mean, y'all, we gotta turn BET off for a minute and start reading this shit and learn why certain people are in certain positions. And again, in places like Detroit, it was real segregated in Detroit. In one suburb of Detroit, not a suburb, but a section of Detroit, there was a white community right next to an interracial community, and they put up a wall right between the communities, and they did this so that the white side can get federal housing loans and benefits, while the other side basically turned into a ghetto. The government was in on this too. Black folks, you need to know about this shit. So when people start trying to tell you, well, damn, your people need to get up on it and get their shit together, no. You let them know what the real deal is. You let them know what the fuck is up. There was a place called Levittown. Levittown was a suburban development built by the Levitt and Son family. The Levittown community was basically the prototype for today's modern suburban community. These were the first guys to mass produce suburban neighborhoods. And many other real estate developers, they followed suit from these guys. And Levittown was in New York. They had a Levittown in Pennsylvania. They had a Levittown in New Jersey. And it was one of the most successful suburban housing communities in the country. And the Levitt community specifically stated on their real estate applications that blacks were not allowed. It was white only. Like I said on the last show, a lot of white folks got these loans, these housing loans, these homeowner loans from the FHA, from the federal government. And black folks couldn't get these loans, and white folks ran out to the suburbs during the phenomenon called white flight. See, people talk about white flight and white people leaving the inner cities and leaving black folks behind, but they never talk about how white folks were able to do white flight. They make it seem like, well, white people had more money than black folks and white people were working harder than black, so that's why they were able to live in the suburbs. That wasn't the case at all. White folks were given loans for damn near no money, and they were able to move into these communities. And black folks, even when they scraped up the money, they said, fuck a loan, I'd make the down payment myself. They still couldn't move into these neighborhoods. So when these Bill O'Reillys and these Sean Hannitys have this old condescending superiority complex attitudes, fuck them. Let them know about this. You feel me? Now, I'm going to get a little deeper on the next show. Again, the Bullshistory show that I'm doing next week, you need to order that show right now because I'm going to talk about some other shit. I'm going to talk more about this book on that. But I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of other deep shit that you guys really need to peep out. But don't forget, man, get this book, Sundown Towns by James Lowen. This book is a must read. Get this book today. Take your ass on Amazon.com and get this book. Because right now, again, Barack Obama, man, he's doing his thing, and a lot of white folks are going to be, well, racism doesn't exist. We have, Barack Obama as the president. You know what I'm saying? So they're going to get ready to say that shit, and just because a black man is doing his thing in spite of, we're not going to forget the bullshit. You feel me? Sundown Towns. Go to Amazon.com and check it out. That's been today's episode of the Mack Lessons Radio Show. I will holler at you in a minute.